American general once wrote, are mighty fine things. And certainly the modern main battle tank, with its awesome combination of firepower, mobility, and armor protection, is a mighty weapon indeed. Its crew are surrounded by several inches of armor plate in a vehicle weighing some 50 tons, which can still break the speed limit on most roads, crushing smaller obstacles in its stride and able to deliver a devastating punch with its stabilized and computerized high-velocity gun. The concept of the main battle tank began to come into its own during the Second World War. Prior to that, tanks had broadly been classed as cavalry vehicles for reconnaissance and were fast but lightly armed and armored, or as infantry support vehicles with heavy armor but low mobility. Then came what was known as the cruiser tank, and it is from this that all subsequent MBTs are really derived. The epitome of the all-purpose tank on the Allied side was the famous M4 Sherman, which started entering service just before Pearl Harbor, and which was subsequently produced in greater numbers than any other tank in the world, apart from the Soviet T-34. Weighing just over 30 tons, with a top speed of about 25 miles per hour, the Sherman had a 5-man crew and was armed with either a 75 or a 76 millimeter gun, a 105 millimeter howitzer, or with a flamethrower for taking out bunkers and tunnels. The M60 is the oldest American main battle tank still in frontline operation and remains a formidable vehicle, even though it first entered service in 1960. It evolved in a straight line from the wartime M26 Pershing through the M47 and M48 Patton 1 and 2, and shares many of their characteristics, particularly in the general hull shape and running gear. It is, though, a much more powerful vehicle, mounting a license-produced version of the British 105mm L7 gun, instead of the 90mm weapon fitted to its predecessors. The L7 was the most accurate and successful tank gun in the world until the introduction of the latest generation of 120mm weapons. The development of a recent American armor-piercing round with a very dense depleted uranium core means that it is still effective against much more modern tanks. The M60 is powered by a 670 horsepower diesel engine, which gives it a cross-country speed of nearly 20 miles per hour, and it has armor plate almost 5 inches thick in places. In action, the tank would operate in concert with self-propelled guns and infantry and armored personnel carriers, together with fighter aircraft and helicopters. For the whole concept of the modern armored division is based on total cooperation between all arms. On today's battlefield, the agile helicopter, with its ability to hover and fire guided missiles from cover, then rapidly move to a new position, is the tank's worst enemy, apart from another tank. Being of the same vintage as the M60, the West German Leopard 1 shares many similar features, including the same 105mm gun. But because the Second World War destroyed so much German industry, when the Federal Republic was admitted to NATO in 1955, its tank designers could start with a clean slate. This meant they could study wartime and post-war mistakes at their leisure, and both design and tool up their factories for a brand new main battle tank. A tribute to the soundness of its basic concept is the fact that Leopard 1, or Leo 1 as it is generally known, is still in frontline service a quarter of a century later. The Leo 1 is of conventional design, with hull and chassis surmounted by a fully revolving turret. Like all modern tanks, it has an engine unit which can be removed and replaced in the field within around 20 minutes, saving invaluable battle time, otherwise lost on maintenance. The transmission system is a similar module which can also be replaced quickly. Main ammunition stowage for 42 rounds of 105mm shells is at the front of the hull. The main gun has an effective range of 2,000 yards and a rate of fire of about 10 rounds a minute. Shells for immediate use are stowed in the basket of the well-shaped turret, which also incorporates a coaxial and anti-aircraft machine gun. The original Leopard 1s had cast turrets, but after an interim period of adding on applique armor plates, these were eventually replaced by a welded design featuring spaced armor more resistant to hollow charge anti-tank shells. Leo 1 is very much of an all-rounder with high agility and good cross-country handling. Its 830 horsepower engine can run on either gasoline or diesel and gives the tank a top speed of 40 miles per hour. After suitable preparation, Leo 1s can ford rivers up to 13 feet deep, the commander giving the driver instructions from the top of his waiting tower. This is not a new idea. German Panzer IIIs were similarly equipped during the Second World War for the planned invasion of England. Although that was called off after the Battle of Britain, the tanks did see valuable later use in Russia. Track guards on many tanks, including the Leopard, provide extra protection against high-explosive anti-tank rounds. Mud and snow grousers are routinely carried on the glasses plate and can replace the rubber track pads when required, for the German Army vividly remembers the problems its tanks had during wartime Russian winters. The commander and driver both have passive light intensifiers, which enable them to see by starlight without giving away their own presence to the enemy, which an infrared searchlight would do. Because it weighs only just over 40 tons, Leo 1 has a very high power-to-weight ratio. The combination of good agility and a powerful gun is what the German designers considered best, even at the sacrifice of armor protection. Leo 1 has armor less than 3 inches thick and still relies on its speed and rate of fire to get out of trouble. Accuracy, though, is even more important than rate of fire. So the Leopard's fire control equipment is coordinated by a dual-axis mirror system, which can be used in daylight or at night. A sophisticated computer estimates a target's bearing, range, and speed, and a laser rangefinder is being retrofitted as standard to older vehicles, vastly improving the chances of a first-round hit. Like almost all modern tanks, the Leo 1 is protected against nuclear, bacteriological, and chemical contamination by a system which keeps the air pressure inside the vehicle higher than the outside air. It also has smoke dischargers on the turret sides to throw up a screen which will obscure enemy gunners' vision for a few vital seconds. The Leopard's gun has automatic stabilization in all planes, so that it can stay on target, regardless of what the driver does, or of humps and bumps in the ground. This is also normal in most other tanks today, and makes firing on the move virtually as accurate as from a stationary position. The commander of the lead tank pumps his arm in the air in the traditional cavalry go signal, and the Leopards rumble forward. With so much German experience of armored warfare, they will be a tough opponent, anyone to beat. Nor does German thoroughness stop with the basic tank itself. An elaborate and computerized simulator allows future Leopard tank drivers to master all the techniques of controlling their vehicles without wear and tear, burning up fuel, or running the risk of knocking in the side of an angry villager's house, although such accidents do still happen on maneuvers. The simulator mimics every rise and fold in the ground, which is actually a miniature landscape over which a tiny wheel responds to each of the driver's commands. A television camera gives him a constant picture from the same perspective he would have through a proper driver's episcope, so he can learn to gauge heights, widths, and distances. The Germans have also produced a special training version of the Leopard for drivers who have qualified on the simulator. The instructor gives his orders from a glassed-in turret, which incorporates a dummy gun. It is attention to detail like this which has resulted in the Leo 1 becoming one of the most formidable weapons in the NATO armory. Italy purchased 800 to run alongside its M60s, and it is also used by the Australian and Canadian armies. The combination of a hard-hitting gun, good mobility, and excellent mechanical reliability, coupled with ease of maintenance, ensure a high level of battlefield survivability. The tank will probably be still in service at the turn of the century. The same is true of the British Chieftain, which entered service 2 years after the Leopard 1. To replace the famous Centurion, which has the best combat record of all post-war tanks, and the unsuccessful Conqueror heavy tank. Chieftain was originally supposed to be a tank in the 40-ton class, like the Leopard, but priority was given to a more powerful gun and thicker armor protection, which resulted in the final weight exceeding 50 tons. This put simply too much strain on the original engine, causing clouds of unwelcome exhaust smoke and an unacceptably high breakdown rate through overheating. Modifications to the engine and transmission systems have largely rectified these faults, and until the advent of more recent designs, Chieftain was unquestionably the heavyweight champion among Western tanks. Like most modern tanks, Chieftain carries a crew of 4 within its thick and well-sloped armor plating. The driver in a semi-reclining position in the hull front to reduce the vehicle's silhouette, and the commander, gunner, and loader in the tightly packed turret compartment. Although exact details are understandably still classified, the tank's most outstanding feature is its 120mm rifled gun, successor to the L7. This can fire high-velocity, spin-stabilized rounds with tungsten or depleted uranium cores to ranges outside 3,000 yards, as well as high-explosive and squash-head shells. The latter do not actually penetrate an enemy tank, but splash and cause fragments of its own armor to break off and ricochet around the interior, with extremely unpleasant consequences to its crew. The Chieftain carries 64 rounds of ammunition for its L11 gun, which is fully stabilized in the horizontal and vertical planes. Original vehicles had a coaxial ranging machine gun, but they are now fitted with an integrated solid-state firing control system, incorporating a laser rangefinder for even greater accuracy. Gunnery practice occupies a great deal of time in the armored divisions of all nations. After the crews have been briefed, the tanks rumble forward to the firing line, each flying a green flag to show that its gun is not yet loaded. When everyone is ready, the guns are loaded, and red flags hoisted to warn onlookers to keep clear. Then the tanks begin firing in turn, so that the umpires can register each crew's personal score. On Chieftain, as on all modern tanks, the barrel is fitted with a bore evacuator, so that smoke from the propellant charges is forced out instead of filling the turret with fumes. After firing from stationary positions, the tanks rumble forward to engage targets while on the move, machine guns stuttering at simulated infantry positions. Once the exercise is over, the tanks return to their marshalling area, while the umpires assess the results. There will be celebrations for some crews and extra work for others. Even though its great weight means that Chieftain can only travel at about half the speed of the Leopard 1, its extremely thick and well-sloped armor gives its crew much greater protection, while its gun is said to be able to knock out any known tank in the world. This combination, of course, makes the tank very expensive. So, for many years, British industry has produced a range of cheaper vehicles for export to those countries whose requirements are not up to NATO's exacting standards. The Vickers Mark III is a classic example of such private venture enterprise. It has been developed from the Mark I of 1959 vintage, which was supplied to India and given the name Vijayanta, and is often called the cheaper Chieftain. The tank features cast steel frontal armor, which is well shaped to deflect enemy shells, and weighs less than 40 tons, because it was decided to equip it with a version of the old 105mm L7 gun instead of the much heavier L11. The old gun is still one of the most accurate in the world, though, and with a laser rangefinder, which is an optional fit, the 3i is one of the best tanks around. It has a 4-man crew and can top 30 miles per hour with either a Rolls-Royce or a General Motors Detroit diesel engine. An even more advanced design is the VMF-5, manufactured jointly by Vickers in the United Kingdom and the FMC Corporation in the United States. This futuristic tank only has lightweight aluminum armor, but it is so well sloped that it gives excellent protection for its 4-man crew. Moreover, the vehicle's 552 horsepower Detroit diesel engine allows it to accelerate to 20 miles per hour in about 6 seconds, and it has a top speed of more than twice that to get it out of trouble fast. The engine is even mounted on rails to enable it to be slid out of the hull rear and replaced in minutes. Main armament is a variant of the 105mm L7 again, but with improved stabilization, range fighting, and sighting equipment. Weighing less than 20 tons, the VMF-5 is fully air portable, making it a front runner for quick reaction forces such as the airborne, marine, and ranger units around the world. When is a tank not a tank? The answer is when it is the Swedish S-tank. The Swedes have not fought a war for well over a century, but they take their neutrality seriously and realize that the best deterrent to any would-be aggressor is a well-equipped and capable home defense force. All tanks have a fully tracked chassis, which gives them good mobility over virtually any sort of terrain. Conventional tanks have a gun mounted fairly high above the ground in a fully revolving turret. The S-tank, however, has its 105mm gun installed in the top of the low-slung hull instead, fed from an automatic loader in the rear. This arrangement allows the tank to be crewed by only 3 men, seated centrally where they are best protected. At a pinch, it could be operated by 2 or even by a single man occupying one of the 2 front seats. Compared with the conventional tank, the STRV-103, to give it its proper name, has a silhouette barely higher than an average man, and so presents a very small target to the enemy. Its crew aim the gun by swiveling the whole chassis. In the same fashion, elevation and depression are achieved by raising or lowering the hydropneumatic suspension. The lack of a turret is not noticeable under most combat conditions, for the S-tank's weight of just under 40 tons fully loaded allows it to traverse smoothly despite minor obstacles in its path. If something larger gets in the way, the tank can swivel on its own axis to bring its gun to bear. Despite all this, and the fact that the tank's low height enables it to hide behind folds in the ground, which would leave half of a conventional tank exposed, the S-tank's one weak point is that it cannot aim and fire while on the move. This makes it primarily a defensive weapon, and for this reason, the Swedes have fitted the vehicle with a front-mounted dozer blade, so it can dig itself in. The blade also gives extra armor protection, of course. To compensate for its one weakness, the S-tank can raise and lower its gun through a full 22 degrees, which is better than many other tanks can manage. The hydropneumatic suspension takes most obstacles in its stride, although the short wheelbase does make the tank pitch uncomfortably at high speed. Other than that, everything possible has been done to reduce crew fatigue, including the provision of the automatic loader, which is filled from the rear with 50 rounds of 105mm ammunition. Inside the tank, the futuristic-looking layout is also designed to make life as easy as possible for the crew and enhance their efficiency. The driver normally aims and fires the gun, acting on orders from the commander. But the commander has duplicate controls and can take over when necessary using the gyro-stabilized sight in his cupola. This can save vital seconds when an unexpected target suddenly appears. Once a target is spotted, the S-tank comes to a rapid halt. Then the gunner releases his safety catch and opens fire. Expended cartridge cases are automatically ejected out of the rear of the tank, and the vehicle can move off again. If it runs into more trouble than it can handle, the commander can lay down a smoke screen to cover its retreat using the 8 hull-mounted dischargers. It does not even have to turn around, for it can be driven just as fast backwards as forwards, steered by the radio operator at his own rearward-facing driving position. This means that the tank can keep its thicker frontal armor turned towards the enemy. The S-Tank has built-in flotation screens, which can be erected in 15 minutes to make it fully amphibious. In the water, it can swim at 4 miles per hour, propelled and steered by its tracks. Cross-country, the vehicle has a top speed of 30 miles per hour, due to the fact that it has 2 engines. For normal use, there is an economical Rolls-Royce diesel. But when greater performance is required, a Boeing gas turbine can be cut in. The latter also starts more easily than a conventional tank engine when the weather is really cold, which it often is in Sweden. Swedish designers are now working on an S-Tank replacement called STRV-2000, which may be turreted or turretless, but will have a computer-designed 141mm gun firing tandem charge rounds. The first round digs a hole in the enemy tank's armor, and the second follows through. One of the most recent developments in tank design is the Cadillac gauge Commando Stingray. This is entirely a private venture for export only, and it's already in production for the Royal Thai Army, with many more orders expected. In general appearance, it greatly resembles the Vickers FMC VMF-5, and it shares many similar characteristics. The gun, however, is a brand new low-recoil version of the standard 105mm L7 weapon developed by Royal Ordnance in Britain. This is an important factor in a vehicle which only weighs 20 tons. Although the Stingray is only lightly armored, its hull and turret design give excellent shot deflection qualities. The gun can fire the whole range of NATO 105mm ammunition, including the latest fin-stabilized discarding sabot round, which is capable of killing any known tank. The gun is also fully stabilized in both elevation and azimuth, and being fitted with a laser rangefinder, passive night vision sights, and a completely integrated digital fire control system, is extremely accurate. The main gun can elevate to a maximum of 18 degrees and depress to 7.5 degrees, while the turret can traverse through a full circle in just 9 seconds. In case of a power failure, the turret can also be cranked round by hand. 8 rounds of ready-use ammunition are carried in the turret, and a further 28 in a stowage locker. There is a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun, and either a second 7.62mm or a 50 caliber machine gun can be mounted on the turret roof. Stingray is fully air portable and can be carried in the C-130 Hercules, which is the Western world's standard military transport. Despite its small size, the interior is remarkably spacious, adding to the crew's comfort and efficiency. The tank is powered by a 535 horsepower V8 diesel engine and has a 4-speed automatic transmission. This gives an extremely high power-to-weight ratio and gives Stingray a top speed of over 40 miles per hour. The qualities of agility in a hard-hitting gun make this very cost-effective light tank an extremely attractive proposition for smaller countries. In the 1950s, France, Germany, and Italy tried to get together to build a new European main battle tank, but in the end failed to reach agreement. While Germany went ahead with the Leopard 1 and Italy bought the M60, France began work on a new tank of their own, the latest version of which is designated AMX-40. With their long experience of desert warfare, the French have produced a tank which is ideally suited to hot, dry, and dusty landscapes. Main armament is a 120mm smoothbore gun, firing fin-stabilized rounds which have impressive armor-piercing capability at ranges over 3,000 yards. Unusually, secondary armament consists of a 20mm coaxial cannon instead of a machine gun. Main ammunition storage is in the large rear turret bustle, which incorporates blowout panels for safety in case of a hit. The cartridge cases themselves are combustible, so there is no clutter in the fighting compartment. Like all the latest tanks, the AMX-40's gun is fully stabilized and incorporates a fully integrated fire control system and laser rangefinder. The commander's cupola gives all-round vision, and he can track and acquire targets independently of the gunner using a panoramic periscope. Once the target is locked into the computer, the turret swivels automatically onto the bearing. The laser measures the range, the computer makes final adjustments, and the gun is fired. This system is so accurate that a first-round hit is virtually guaranteed. The whole process of aiming, ranging, correcting, and firing takes less than 7 seconds. The gun can fire either high-velocity solid core discarding sabot rounds or high-explosive anti-tank shells, both of which give impressive results, although of course actual performance figures are still secret. The hollow charge rounds are uniquely stabilized in flight by a ring of ball bearings to prevent them spinning. Dischargers on the turret sides can either lay down a smoke screen to conceal the tank or throw out anti-personnel grenades to deal with enemy infantry. Like most modern armored fighting vehicles, the AMX-40 has passive light intensifying equipment to enable it to operate at night. Once the tank's computer is locked on, the gun will continue to track the chosen target, however the driver throws the vehicle around. Further crew protection is afforded by automatic fire extinguishers, and the tank obviously has filters against nuclear, biological, and chemical contamination. The tank features Chobham-style laminate armor, which gives much greater protection than an equal weight of traditional hardened steel. An 1100cc diesel engine gives excellent cross-country mobility over hard or soft ground with a top speed of 44 miles per hour and a range of 370 miles. AMX-40 is designed principally for export and is expected to follow the success of the earlier AMX-30, which is in service with 9 countries in addition to France. With all its modern features, it is certainly an opponent worthy of respect. Latest in the long line of Vickers tanks designed for export is the Mark 7, developed from the Mark 4 Valiant. In just the same way the Mark 3I is nicknamed Cheaper Chieftain, so the Mark 7 has aptly been called Cheaper Challenger. It's a collaborative venture with West Germany and features basically the same chassis as the Leopard 2, plus the same MTU 1500 horsepower turbocharged diesel engine. The hull and turret were developed by Vickers and are constructed of Chobham armor over welded steel plates. With a combat weight of only 55 tons compared to Challenger's 62, the Mark 7 is more agile and has a top speed of 45 miles per hour, plus a range of over 340 miles. It has a Marconi integrated gun and fire control system interfaced with a ballistic computer and a telescopic laser sight. For main armament, the tank can either be fitted with the British 120mm L11 rifled gun or the Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore. Secondary armament is a coaxial 7.62mm Hughes chain gun, which, unlike a conventional machine gun, cannot be stopped through a blockage. As you would expect, the Mark 7 has all the other state-of-the-art features, including full stabilization for the gun, which can be aimed and fired by either the commander or the gunner. Passive night vision equipment is standard, as is an overpressure NBC filtration system. And the whole vehicle is even coated with a layer of infrared reflective paint to make it almost invisible to an enemy at night. The British Army's Challenger is the world's largest and heaviest contender in the main battle tank stakes, and like Chieftain and Centurion before it, is a credit to the country which fielded the first workable tank back in 1916. The whole story of modern tank development revolves around the fact that no sooner has one vehicle been accepted for production than work has already begun on its successor. During the mid-1960s to the mid-1970s, there was as much talk about a NATO tank as there had been a decade earlier. And in the end, each of the individual partners again went their own way. Britain concentrating on a replacement for Chieftain called the MBT-80. This fell by the wayside because of the huge cost. But in 1979, salvation came from an unexpected direction. The Shah of Iran had ordered over 1,300 Super Chieftains with the still top-secret Chobham armor and more powerful engines. When his regime was toppled by the Ayatollahs, production had already started. So the British Army inherited the Shir Iran, which was promptly renamed Challenger. One key to Challenger's superiority over Chieftain lies in its Rolls-Royce 1,200 horsepower multi-fuel engine, which provides not only greater reliability than the earlier power pack, but at top speed, 10 miles per hour higher. A new hydro-pneumatic suspension system also gives the road wheels greater travel, and the crew a smoother ride over rough ground, which in turn eases the strain on the gun's stabilizers. The gun itself is the same 120mm L11A5 rifled weapon developed by Royal Ordnance for the Chieftain, but firing a new fin-stabilized discarding sabot round with greater armor penetration capabilities. Meanwhile, a high-pressure gun of the same caliber, which will have even greater range than the Challenger's existing 5,000 yards plus, is under development and will be retrofitted. Challenger was the first operational tank in the world to be fitted with the revolutionary part metal, part nylon, and part ceramic Chobham armor developed by the Fighting Vehicle Research Development Establishment at Chobham in England. This confers approximately 4 times the protection of normal steel armor plate without the same weight penalty, and is now fitted to the latest American, German, and French tanks as well. In Challenger, its only drawback is that it hampers the driver's sideways vision, but this is a small price to pay. As you would expect, Challenger is fitted with a whole gamut of latest high-tech equipment, including full gun stabilization, Marconi integrated computer fire control system, Pilkington day and night sights, and Barr and Stroud laser rangefinder and thermal imaging system. Like Chieftain, Challenger is a 4-man tank, and for secondary armament also has a coaxial and a turret machine gun, although one or both may soon be replaced by the Hughes chain gun. Conventional turret-mounted dischargers are used to spread a smoke screen, but experiments have not ceased with a visual and infrared screening system, which fills the air with a gray fog of exploding popcorn pellets and defeats enemy thermal imaging sites. What is most surprising about such a large and heavy tank is sheer agility and speed of response. It will eventually replace about half the chieftains in Britain's armored divisions, most of them in Germany, and will soldier confidently on well past the turn of the century until yet another new design replaces it, possibly even a turretless tank with an automatic loader controlled through video cameras by an operator miles from the firing line. Another front runner in today's tank stakes is the West German Leopard 2, developed after plans for a collaborative venture with American designers fell through in 1970. One beneficial result of the earlier talks, though, was that both sides agreed to standardize between their rival designs as much as possible. So Leopard 2 shares the same Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore gun with the U.S. Army's M1A1 Abrams. This is extremely accurate out to 4,000 yards by day or night. Because it is a smoothbore weapon, it cannot fire spin-stabilized rounds. So, fins are fitted to both its solid core discarding sabot rounds and to its heat or high explosive anti-tank shells. The gunner's sights are fully stabilized. The difference between a stabilized and an unstabilized view of the target are immediately apparent. A thermal image intensifier allows the gunner to pick up targets by day or night. He also has an auxiliary telescopic sight in case of a failure in the main integrated fire control system. A panoramic periscope in the turret roof gives the commander all-round vision, and as in the AMX-40, allows him to override the gunner and personally engage a target. The fire control computer automatically assesses and presents all the relevant data. This includes range, type of ammunition selected, cant angle of own vehicle, movement of target, and movement of own vehicle. All this means that the gun can be fired with equal accuracy whether the tank is moving or stationary. Auxiliary armament comprises a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun for use against enemy infantry, while a second machine gun on the turret roof can engage low-flying aircraft. Leo 2's generally chunky appearance compared with its predecessor is the result of it being fitted with Chobham armor over its turret and hull front and sides. This gives a high degree of protection against both kinetic energy and high explosive armor-piercing rounds. The floor plates are specially designed to give maximum protection against anti-tank mines. The 55-ton tank's extraordinary agility is conferred by the same 1,500 horsepower MTU turbo diesel engine as fitted to the Vickers Mark 7. This gives an exceptionally high power-to-weight ratio of 26 brake horsepower per ton. Turret-mounted smoke grenade dischargers allow the Leopard to conceal itself and escape if it runs into a situation it cannot handle. The inevitable filters against nuclear, biological, and chemical contamination can be changed from outside the vehicle. All of these features mean that Leopard 2 is not only an extremely elusive target with high battlefield survivability, but also a weapon capable of delivering a devastating punch. It can accelerate from a standing start to 20 miles per hour in just 6 seconds. Top speed is a remarkable 45 miles per hour. Braking distances from top speed is only 38 yards. While the top half of the tank is considerably different from Leo 1, the lower hull is virtually unchanged, and the hydropneumatic steering unit gives infinitely variable lock. This allows Leo 2 to swivel on its own axis in a mere 5 seconds. The Leopard is capable of crossing anti-tank ditches of up to 10 feet wide. It can also surmount vertical obstacles up to 3 feet high. The suspension system gives a very smooth ride over all types of lesser obstacle. The tank can be fitted with the same deep wading equipment as the Leo 1. The commander giving the driver steering instructions from the top of his conning tower. This arrangement allows the Leopard 2 to ford rivers up to 13 feet deep. The driver, sitting in the right-hand side of the hull front, has excellent vision through a pair of wide episcopes. With over 1,800 Leopard 2s in West German Army service alone, and others supplied to Belgium and Switzerland, the tank is a major weapon in the defense of Western Europe. Its combination of speed, maneuverability, armor protection, and formidable firepower ensure that it will remain in the front line for many years to come. The most important tank in the Warsaw Pact lineup is the T-72. No one in the West knows exactly how many have been built, but in 1985, production was reported to be running at 2,000 vehicles a year, at which time it had already been in service for 11 years. It is this sheer numerical superiority over the NATO armored divisions which has forced the West to seek for quality over quantity and develop vehicles which can survive in the face of tremendous odds. At first glance, the T-72 looks very similar to all post-war Soviet tanks, with a very low-slung hull and saucer-shaped turret. But in fact, it is a very different vehicle from the earlier T-54, T-55, T-62, and T-64. What principally worried Western observers when details first began to trickle through was the fact that it is armed with a 125mm smoothbore gun, compared with earlier Russian tank guns of 100 or 115mm caliber. In the early 1970s, this was more powerful than any Western tank armament and spurred on the development of Chieftain, Leopard 2, and ultimately the American M1 Abrams. The T-72 could wade shallow rivers with ease and can also be fitted with a snorkel to provide ventilation for the crew and engine when crossing deeper water obstacles. The T-72's gun can fire fin-stabilized solid core discarding sabot, high-explosive anti-tank, and conventional high-explosive rounds, 40 of which are stowed in a magazine beneath the turret floor. The tank has an automatic loader, which reduces the crew to only 3, commander, gunner, and driver, and also means that the turret profile is smaller than on any Western main battle tank. The gun has an effective range of over 2,000 yards, and armor-piercing capability must be extremely high. Nevertheless, T-72s supplied to Soviet customers in the Middle East have suffered heavily at the hands of old Israeli Centurions armed with a 105mm L7 gun. The extremely cramped conditions inside the tank, plus insufficient crew training, probably account for a great deal of this. Moreover, the automatic loader actually seems to give a lower rate of fire than can be achieved by a skilled manual loader. The tank weighs 41 tons. V12 liquid-cooled 780 horsepower engine gives it a top road speed of 43 miles per hour, or about 35 miles per hour cross-country. Range is not known exactly, but it is reported to be about 250 to 300 miles. For secondary armament, there is a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun plus a 12.7mm heavy anti-aircraft machine gun on the turret roof. In battle, the Warsaw Pact armies make great use of helicopters to give close support to their armored divisions. These are normally MiL-Mi-24s, designated Hind by NATO, which can fire guided anti-tank missiles or clusters of free-flight rockets. A new anti-tank helicopter designated Havoc is expected to replace the Hinds in due course. The T-72 has conventional hardened steel armor, which is less resistant to modern anti-tank guns and missiles than Chobham-style laminate armor, but Soviet metallurgy is extremely advanced, and the tank's low silhouette and cleanly sloped lines offer few shot traps. Although not shown here, it is known that all Soviet tanks are also being retrofitted with reactive armor. This Israeli invention consists of small plates, rather like the tiles on the space shuttle, which explode outwards when struck by a high-explosive anti-tank round, dissipating much of its effect. They also confer a degree of extra protection against kinetic energy rounds. The T-72's successor, about which is known other than its designation T-80, is believed to have both Chobham-style armor and reactive plates. T-72 is known to have an integrated fire control computer system, full gun stabilization, and a laser rangefinder, as well as smoke discharges to help get it out of trouble. But unfortunately, other details are elusive. Although it is outclassed by Challenger, Leopard 2, and the Abrams, and probably the AMX-40, it would undoubtedly give the earlier Navy tanks a hard time, and is certainly a powerful and well thought out design. The U.S. Army's M1 Abrams is the first all-new tank to be developed in America since the war, and produced to meet the Soviet armored threat in the last quarter of the century. And by the end of 1989, over 7,000 are expected to be in service. After the attempt to develop a joint with West Germany fell through in 1970, Congress authorized the go-ahead for a new all-American vehicle in 1973. and prototypes were in the Army's hands by 1976. The first batch of M1s were fitted with a license-built version of the British 105mm L7 gun. But since 1985, production has switched to a fine-metal 120mm smoothbore, which is said to have a 25% greater armor-piercing capability. Abrams fitted with this gun are designated M1A1. Both the 105 and the 120mm guns are fully stabilized and incorporate laser rangefinders and state-of-the-art fire control systems that practically guarantee a first-round hit or kill by day or night. The tank has extremely cleanly sloped Chobham armor, which makes its turret and fighting compartment virtually immune to most tank guns and missiles. It is powered by a high-performance Avco-Lycoming gas turbine engine, which develops 1,500 horsepower. The M1 was carefully designed to protect its four-man crew from volatile materials, particularly its fuel and ammunition. Armored steel doors across the rear of the turret separate the crew from the ammunition, while giving easy access. Blowout panels in the roof of the bustle safeguard them in the event of explosion. An automatic fire suppression system provides added safety in the fighting compartment. Infrared sensors detect a fire in 4.5 milliseconds, activating the halon fire extinguishers. The worst of fires is detected and defeated in 0.2 of a second, twice as fast as the blink of an eye. The effectiveness of these systems has been tried and proven under rigidly controlled conditions. Since the first production M1s rolled off the assembly lines in 1980, the systems have continued to improve. New electronic, automotive, and fire control technology have resulted in increased protection and efficiency. Future improvements to the powertrain, target acquisition system, crew station configuration, and vehicle command and control will further enhance survival. The tank will continue to evolve in quality to keep ahead of the Soviet threat, maintaining a technological edge in the balance of power. With its impressive speed and mobility, a range of over 300 miles, and an ability to cross trenches and other obstacles every bit as good as any other tank, the Abrams is a real front-runner. It even has its own internal smokescreen generating system. This is the tank against which all others are now measured.